to talk to you about client requests. Now, I had a client recently who one of their team members is like, okay, so we're fine-tuning our project manager and everything is great, but how do we do these one-off requests, right? And sometimes one-offs can mean like a lot of requests from a client, and they're like, yeah, clients are, they can be emailing us, and it could be anyone on the team. So it might be the account manager, it might be the owner sometimes, because the client thinks that they're gonna get an answer faster. So how do we actually deal with all of these requests? Now, there's a couple of things that you can do from a very tactical standpoint and also from a team standpoint. Now, in theory, for the team, you want to be able to funnel the request to the account manager, right? And one of the first things to do to kind of, get that behavior, I would say, to modify that behavior is to, one, really put the trust in whoever the account manager is, because sometimes this can happen mid-account or into an account, or maybe someone's been dealing with that person for a long time and then they have to move. So first things first is really get that account manager to have all the trust and credibility. So that way the client feels comfortable sending their request to them, right? Now, there might be a ticketing system, there might be, an account management portal. If you have that, great. If not, if the actual emails are coming through and you're funneling them, you want to be able to, every single project management system has some sort of link or URL, if you go into it, where you can set it up where you can actually forward your emails onto that project manager. So first things first, you want to be able to technically set yourself up so that you can funnel things very, very quickly into whatever your project management system is. So from a technical standpoint, whether you're using Teamwork or Basecamp, Asana, Monday, there's a link in each of the projects where you can identify and send them to, like as if it were a contact. And then in your personal email, you can set up that contact so that it is set up as a, almost like as a person. So you can be like client requests, or you can name it something. So that way it's easy for you as you're going through your inbox. So that's kind of step, 1 and 2 is setting up your system, A, and then 2, setting up the person so that they're set up for success. Now, the second bit that you want to take a look at is actually looking at the client requests and categorizing, whether or not this request is real. Now, what I mean by that is that every once in a while, a client may come in and ask for something that's absolutely insane. And so you really want to clarify the request, and you want to make sure that the request makes sense. So, so the first things, it might be very, very clean, like, hey, we need a landing page for X, Y, and Z. We had deferred it. Now we need this, right? So it can be super, super clean. You might have all of the instructions. You may have everything. Or it can be something that's absolutely, that doesn't make any sense. Like, hey, I'm thinking about a landing page. Can you guys get one done by, within 48 hours? Now, so it's like, what kind of landing page? Do you have the materials? Do you have the copy? So we want to be able to really clarify what that request is. So first things first is being able to, 1, go back and ask the client, like, hey, can you clarify this? Then, once you get an actual response and you're able to put it into the project management system, you want to forward it. Now you're in your PM, and so there's a place inside of your project management system, just for client requests. That way the production team can then take a look at them and then start categorizing them. Right? Because you want to go between your account management and your project management. Now, they may be one and the same, but having the system will allow you to scale these 2 areas of your business, right? Now, you're in your project management and you have you have requests. Now, it could be maybe 1 off per week. It could be 20 off per week. It could be 200 off per week, depending on what your volume looks like. Now, inside of that, you can then start to categorize and prioritize the requests depending on what the deadlines are, depending on how much work is required, and all of that. So then the second thing would be being able to actually categorize those requests. Now, if the request is clear, great. We can then ask our resources whether or not this is inside of scope or outside of scope, because that's the thing that ends up tripping up a lot of people, and they end up losing money, and their profitability per client, because they keep getting all these requests, and sometimes it's from one particular client or account or team, and you're doing all of this work, and all of a sudden you're bleeding money and you have no idea why. And the reason is all of these one-offs, and no one cross-referenced whether or not they were inside of scope, right? Even if you're on a retainer, you want to make sure that that request is inside of the retainer scope. Because if it's out of scope, then you have to go back and either, decide. Someone then has to make a decision. Okay, are we going to take this on because we want to delight the client? This is a long-term client. They never do this. Oh my God, this is an opportunity for us to actually delight the client. Or is this an opportunity to create a change order and, grow the account potentially, depending on how big this is, right? Or do we have to go back to the client and have a conversation about, this being outside of scope and getting more money for it, right? So that's a piece that is always really missing, right? So first is the categorization, prioritization, and then checking out and selecting whether it's inside or outside of scope, right? Now, if it's inside of scope and the team knows what to do, boom, you can then go from that place in your project manager, which is for client requests, and then deploy it into the client's account, for the production team to go ahead and execute. And if it's outside of scope, we may or may not have to ask, for a quote and really take a look at what is the criteria, what is needed. We may have to go back to the client and ask for those additional instructions. So if it's that very random landing page where you had no instructions, no copy, no images, no nada, right? We have to go back there and then say, okay, are you expecting us to create all of this? Is there someone on your team? Where are the assets, right? And you basically have to onboard that new project from the client. Now, in order to do that, you may or may not have to have a conversation with whoever's doing your production or execution to say, okay, what are the parameters that are for this to be, to create a new scope for this? And then also, what is the timeline, right? Because when a client asks for something and they want it yesterday, that, may be inside of scope, and that may be totally inside the purview of what you guys are doing for that client. However, it may not be. So if it's not, and getting a clear understanding of what is the capacity of your team to actually be able to fulfill on this. So does your team have, a large capacity and it's like, you know what? Yeah, we can get it done by tomorrow. Awesome. Or you know what? Actually, we're pretty full. This is totally last minute request. We're going to have a conversation with the client and be able to set up a timeline and some deadlines that actually make sense for everybody, right? So then we need to create a sort of plan of action. And once we get the capacity, the timeline, and the estimate, we can confirm with the client and then push it out to production inside of our project management system. So I wanted to give you guys, because this comes up so many different times, of how do you deal with, one-off client requests? And there is a process inside of your entire, project management system of how to go about doing this, right? And there's a triage between your account managers, your production and execution team, and potentially whoever's doing the strategy for X, for X thing, right? Because if your one-off request is affecting the entire strategy, we want to go back and be able to cross-reference that and double check that it's matching the goals of the client, so that we can deliver something that holistically makes sense, is making them happy, is adding value, and is really helping them to achieve their goals, right? Because sometimes the client request may not be there to actually achieve their goals. And we want to be able to tell our clients that if we're looking to really fulfill upon the value of the original plan for that client.